Welcome, everybody, to Latino Free Minds. This interview here was originally scheduled for July 22nd, 2025. It didn't happen, but a year later, we're here. Steve Hilton is the Republican nominee who earned the top spot in the ticket, and now he's going to face off against Javier Becerra in November. To quote his opponent, this isn't a gotcha piece, but it's not a profile piece either. This is a let's keep it real piece. Um, Nobody went harder at Steve Hilton than Latino Free Minds, and that's no secret. But today, we're giving our audience and ourselves the chance to truly get to know our candidate with no filters and just straight talk. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Fantastic. I'm really happy to be with you. Sorry we didn't do it last year, but I'm happy that we're here now. And, in this, like the most important stretch as we run in to try and kick out these disastrous Democrats after 16 years of one-party rule. It's a big year. We got to do it.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's an important election, and we gotta do what we can, right, to turn this thing around. Danny and
Exactly.
Gio, how are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Morning,
I'm very
Steve.
excited.
Thank you for being here with us today, this morning.
Cool,
Happy
cool.
to be here.
Yeah. So we'll get these questions going, and we just kind of want to see where you're at, where you stand, and we'll go from there. Cool. So, question number one. So Xavier Becerra's strategy has been kind of clear, and I feel like he's barely attacking you, and he's instead running against Donald Trump. That's what he's going with, right? Hoping to scare voters with the Trump boogeyman. On our side, there was a lot of infighting and fractured support in the primary. How do you plan to unite conservatives that might be skeptical of you, and while also convincing enough Democrats and independents to look past Trump and vote for you in November?
Yeah, I think that you're right about Becerra in the way he's talking about it, because what else have they got to say? Just to quickly deal with him. I mean, as I mentioned, 16 years now, they've had complete control of California. And when I say they, it really is this machine, this political machine, highly corrupt, funded by the government unions and these activist groups and the far left. And Becerra is a total creature of that. He's the puppet of this machine. That's why I think they were so excited when he kind of emerged after the Swalwell thing and became the guy that came to the top. And so they think, and he just does what they think, that they just have to sit back. They're going to win. It's California. Democrat always wins. The machine always wins. And it's impossible, actually, for them to say anything else, because the record that they've got after 16 years where they've run everything, right? They've had all the statewide offices, supermajority in the legislature, state Supreme Court, 6-1 majority, people forget that, all the big counties, all the big cities. It's a disaster, right? Highest cost of living, highest poverty rate, highest unemployment rate, crime, homelessness. The school results are a disaster. Highest taxes, worst result. Everywhere you look, disaster. So they can't talk about the record. They can't. He's got no plans for the future. When he's asked, what would you change? What would you do differently? He says nothing, basically. So he's got nothing to say in defense of the past. He's got nothing in terms of new ideas for the future. All they've got is Trump, 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 MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. That's it. So that's them. In terms of our side, I'm excited about leading this force for change that we got to have in California. And I've always been clear that my attitude, I'm an open kind of person. I try and get on with everybody. I'm a pragmatic kind of person. I'm not ideological. I just want to, do basic, simple things that help people live a good life in California, deal with all the nonsense. I'm not on some ideological crusade. My door is open to everyone. In terms of the primary, if you look at the actual way the votes went down, I ended up with about 25%. Chad Bianco, my opponent, got about 10%. It's a pretty clear win there. But I would say, as I said on election night, actually, to everyone who voted for me and everyone who didn't vote for me, that I'm not trying to be here as a person who wants to kind of tell you how to live your life or do things in a particular way. I just want you to be able to have the California dream, live the life you want, raise your family, run your business, do your job, whatever that means to you, the California dream. I want you to have that. And so I think that that is a message that's positive and open, and it actually applies not just to all the Republicans. Whether or not they voted for me, all the people on the other side. We're not going to win just with Republicans. That's obvious, and we can get into how we win in a second. But it's okay. Last night we did a town hall in San Francisco. Today we're in Oakland. Last night we had many Democrats come to that event. I asked for a show of hands. Who's here who's a Democrat? Many hands went up, and independents. They came up to me and said, "Oh, I voted for Matt Mahan," or "I voted for Katie Porter," or whatever. So people see, I think, that that's what I'm all about. And I think as we get into the campaign for real, as we get closer to November, I think I'm really confident we can win this. It's not going to be
Mhm.
easy. I've never said that. But I
Mhm.
really believe that we can win for all sorts of different reasons.
Yeah, no, I think, if you get the right momentum and everything, yeah, it can be done. But it's true what you said. It is not going to be easy because I think on average, most governor elections, at least I want to say that at least the last four, it's
Hmm.
been around 60-40. So it's
Exactly.
kind of like, it's a in a sense, it's like, okay, you might be starting behind just if you're playing that number game, right?
Yeah.
But you made a valid point. There might be a lot of Democrats, independents that see Becerra, and it's like more of the same, right? The
More
the
the
guy
same.
that gave Newsom an A in homelessness, and
Exactly.
I mean, there's a saying that we say here on Latino Free Minds. It's like vote your reality,
I think
and
that's great. I love and I just want to and in terms of the reality, how people judge it, right? You
right.
look at that 60-40 number, that's right. But there's another number, very important. If you look at the polling there's a question that in many elections over the years, different places, is a really good indicator of whether an election will be what they call a change election, where they kick out the incumbent, whoever it is, party, candidate, whatever. And that's the question that says, is the state or the country or whatever on the right track, wrong track? They sometimes call it the wrong track number. In the last
Mhm.
governor's race in 2022 for California, the wrong track percentage was about 40, like mid to high 40s. Today, it's mid to high 50s. Sometimes it's been over 60% of Californians who say we're on the wrong track and we need change. So that's your basis for believing we can. There's a majority of
Mhm.
Californians who think we need change.
No, yeah, and a lot of the content that we do, I'll agree with you. We're not ideological. We're not trying to force what we believe on everybody, but we want people to, if there is that belief, right, we're on the wrong track. Well, our content is just this is what's happening. We don't like it, but hey, you decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And
But
a
you know
lot of
what?
it is wrong track type of things that are going on. It's like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And
But
it
I'd love
just
to know from
keeps
you
happening.
guys. Let's have a conversation because I'm really curious. Like, why did you have a go at me? Right? What do you? Why do you think, in a way, why do you think I'm on the wrong track? Or is it something about me? Is it something about what I've been saying? Let's get into that because I think that's a really. I'm just really interested in that.
So that kind of gets into the question that I was going to ask you next too, and I can kind of answer that. I can start the answer with this: is that when we see a candidate come in and they just get a big endorsement, for example, you got the endorsement from the president Donald
Hmm.
Trump. It almost what it feels like is the decision has already been made for us.
Hmm.
So one of the things that we always talk about here is the low voter turnout that we have, especially, I mean, we're Latinos, so we kind of talk about that side of it from that perspective. There's a lot of distrust with the government. Our parents, our grandparents, or great grandparents left the country they were born in for those same reasons, because when we start a conversation and we talk about this, I'll give you an example. If I talk to an aunt or uncle and I go, "Do you believe that the Mexican government is corrupt?" Before I finish asking the question, they're shaking their head yes, and they're in agreement, right?
Hmm.
And that's the feeling that this generation is starting to feel, or has been feeling for a long time.
Hmm.
So that I guess let's call it just the endorsing perception. That's part of it to answer your question.
Interesting. So I mean, that was very late in the process, right? I launched my campaign at the end of April, and just on my own. I'd never done it. I've never run for office before. Put it together. We started raising money. Obviously people knew me from Fox News, right? I hosted a show there for a number of years. That's really how people knew me. But most of my career wasn't that. And in fact, I'm an immigrant. I kind of say twice over because my parents are Hungarian and they were refugees from communism in Hungary. I was born in England, very kind of regular working class immigrant life. My parents split up when I was young. My stepfather, also Hungarian, also a refugee, he didn't really have much of an education. He worked construction, so that was my childhood. I'd go and help out on construction sites, and then you work hard. I made it to Oxford University. I kind of had a great opportunity in my life. I started a business, made some money, bought my own place, ended up going back into into politics, helping to work for a prime minister. So that, and then we move here. I teach at Stanford, start another business, have a career in the media. That's like a great story of opportunity, climbing that ladder of opportunity. But for me, I remember where I came from. Right, that's my roots. That's my story. Is the story of aspiration and opportunity for a working class immigrant from a working class immigrant family. And so
Mm,
I've always seen myself feel very strongly not
mm,
part of the establishment, not part of the elite, an outsider. That's really how I've always felt. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting that maybe what you're getting at there is that this sense that, oh, that means he's inside. That's not how I feel at all. And it was quite late. I remember the day when President Trump endorsed me. Remember, I didn't ask for him to endorse me. There was no conversation about that. I didn't discuss it with him. It literally came out of the blue. I remember the day. It was Easter Sunday. It was weird because my wife and my two sons were away actually because there was Easter break. They went for a break with some of my son's friends. They went for a trip. So I was on my own actually because I couldn't get away. I was on the campaign. And that Sunday, we went and did an event near us in the Bay Area at home down near San Jose, an event for the Iranian New Year, Nowruz. And it was a big event and spoke there, lots of people. And then I got home, I had a few hours on my own, like really unusually in the campaign. And I was like, I think I was making a photo book from one of our vacations, whatever. And I decided to go to bed. It's like late, 10:30, something like that. And suddenly my phone's going off. Congratulations, amazing, whatever. What is it? I had no idea. Literally no idea. I have an old flip phone, so I couldn't even see. They were sharing the post from Trump. I couldn't see what it said. So I went to my laptop, opened it up, and said, oh my, I had no idea. Like literally no idea. And so to me, but I always say I was honored to get it. He's the president of the country. I'm a new American citizen. I'm proud to be an American. It's an amazing thing. And then of course the Democrats will make a big thing of it. Trump, 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 as we said earlier.
mm,
My argument is it's useful to have a governor who's got a good relationship with the president and the team, the cabinet, members of the cabinet, and so on, because you can get good results for California. That's what it's all about in the end. But that's how I see it. I see it as something that was unexpected, but
mm.
I'm honored to have it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's part of it. And to kind of answer your question, right? From my personal point of view, uh, you know, and I don't even know if I'm gonna leave this in or not because I didn't really want to bring it up. But when you know, when we were told that you weren't coming on, I told what I told you outside the Save Girl Sports thing.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a response from your team again. To me, that felt like, oh man, I can't believe Steve's falling for the label thing, and
Hmm.
isn't going to try to figure it out with us. At least what we were told. We never heard it directly from you,
Yeah, I think
but
that was
from
a complete and that sort of ridiculous,
and I think
bad
that's what kind of
communication.
yeah, and that's what from my personal perspective, that's what kind of pushed me like away from you because in my
Right.
mind, anyone that I see that's trying to be a leader but is falling for labels, to me, especially after COVID, I don't take that person as
Yeah.
seriously. Now,
All
not
right.
to say you're not a serious candidate, just in general. So that's kind of part of the reason,
Well, I'm
whatever
really sorry
happened
about
there.
that.
No, no, no,
So
you're
the
good,
thing,
you're good. It
no, but I
was
want to
like I said, it
explain
wasn't you. It wasn't you that said it. It was
exactly.
somebody else. So
And I've got a really strong point of view. and which I say to the team, it's like, look, my job is to be out there and to talk to everybody on all sides. And so that's why I go on MS, whatever it's called now, as well as Fox News and Newsmax and whatever. And I do podcasts with people on the left and on the right. And I want to do more of that because that's my job is to say, look, we've got this is serious. We've got to save California. It's not going well. If we're not careful, we're going to go down even faster. More businesses leaving. The chaos will get worse. The schools will get. We can't go on like this. And so this is a really serious moment. And that is so I say I've got to talk to everyone. There's nobody that I'm not going to talk to. So that's very weird and unusual. I want to say it's the only time it happened in the entire campaign. It wasn't my decision. I didn't even know. So I'm sorry about that. And I'm really happy that we're here today.
No, no,
No, that's
likewise.
awesome.
Likewise. Go ahead, Danny.
Well, yeah, and for me personally, that really doesn't matter because, people are going to say what they want to say and, you know, maintain a certain circle if they have any type of control over it. So it's whatever to me. But, to continue answering your question, there's also the unknown. You kind of you said that you came in. Some of us did know you from Fox. We're Trump supporters, so that's a really good endorsement. I'm not saying that because you got that endorsement, that's why we weren't supporting you. On the contrary, it kind of brought attention to you. We started
Mhm.
looking into you and things of that nature. But then there's the grassroots feels, and then if there's a candidate that we have that connection that feels like it's grassroots. We connect with what they're saying and whatnot.
Mhm.
And for us, that happened to be Chad Bianco.
Mhm.
Um, so that's another aspect to it. So it wasn't anything I would say that stood out. The only other thing is that here in California and across the country, I think you can understand this is that we see rhinos left and
Mhm.
right. They come, they go, they promise that they're going to do this, they promise that they're going to do that, and honestly, we're walking on eggshells. We don't know if we're being lied to. It's campaign season. We start hearing everything that we want to hear. And then as soon as it's over, and I mean literally, as soon as it's over, that's the last that we hear. And that's
Yeah.
what we're used to here in California. So we're pretty skeptical to answer your question. I think that's a big part of it also.
Yeah, you're right to be. I think that's right. And in the end, then the only proof of that is what you do, right? So
Hmm.
I agree with that. But I think that one thing I would say is I've been very consistent about my views. I've been very, and I've got much more out there on the record. Over the years and years, I've been out there as a sort of public figure of one kind or another than most people. And I think I've been very consistent, and I'm clear about what I want to do, and I think I speak strongly and clearly about what's gone wrong in California, the direction we need to take, and I don't think there's any doubt about that in my mind. But if there are specific things that you are concerned about, tell me what they are, or even what others, what are the kinds of areas of policy where you feel like people have said one thing and then done another in office. I mean, although to be honest, the problem in California is we haven't had enough Republicans in office. You can't even
Mhm.
see, if you like, there's not even an opportunity for betrayal because they never even get elected.
That's a
It's
good
been
point.
such a long time.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
I'm speaking in general. That's in any Democrat. They start talking about cleaning up homelessness and affordability and whatnot,
Right, on the
and that
Democrat.
actually gets
Yeah,
worse.
yeah,
So I'm applying that to both sides, not generally just
got it.
one side.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's totally right on the Dem. I mean, look, if you just they're doing it now, right? As you say, they talk all the time about affordability. Oh, it's so expensive. What do they do just the other day? Massive tax increase in California on health premiums, on software. And there's another one just a couple of days ago. It's going to be another health tax increase that they've pushed into next year. The gas tax just went up July the 1st. So they keep talking about affordability, and literally as they're talking about affordability, they are making California less affordable. So I think that's a totally fair critique.
Yeah, and it kind of leads into the next question, which is, the ideas that you have, they make sense. They're common sense ideas, right? You're, cutting taxes, income taxes for Californians, lowering gas prices, you know, um, you have a bunch of things that make a lot of sense and that would, if implemented, would really help out everybody
Hmm.
in this state, you know. Um, but again, like you mentioned too, it's the legislature that we have is a supermajority Democrat, and who knows what'll hopefully come November we put a big dent in that.
Yeah,
But let's say for some reason you get in and they kind of still hold more of a majority in the legislature on day one, what kind of executive orders, appointments, or directives would you use right away to start
mhm,
cutting? And this is the problem here: unelected
yeah.
bureaucrats, advisory bodies, and task force. Or how would you kind of shift that around? Because I know there's a lot of things that the governor himself can't get rid of, but you would have the power to at least change. Who's heading those
Yeah.
agencies, and how does Cal Doge fit into that?
So there's really important. That's the heart of the question. What can you do? I think there's one kind of. I'll start by saying this. The kind of the fundamental problem in California that's made everything so expensive and so difficult, right? Such a hassle to build anything, to run your business, do anything. The drivers of that are the taxes and the regulations, and they all kind of go together because it's grown into this big bloated bureaucratic nanny state government. Um, in terms of those two, tax regulation, the tax side of it is harder for the governor to do on their own because you've got to do that with the legislature. The regulation side, that's where you've got much more freedom to act because the regulations are coming out of the executive branch. It's what you just described, all those agencies, over 200 separate state agencies and commissions, whatever they call them, boards, and thousands of appointments, over 4,000. And some of the ones are better known than others. CARB, the California Air
Mhm.
Resources Board, they're massively at the heart of driving up the cost of energy, gas, electric, and so on. But you've also got the Coastal Commission in the Central Valley, a massive issue for farmers' offices, water. You've got the State Water Resources Control Board, the Pesticide Board, all of these different boards. So
Mhm.
that's where you can immediately act. And that's the work that we're doing. And you mentioned Cal Doge, and part of it is finding fraud and waste and areas you can cut spending. But another part is the work we're doing to look at, like specifically into all these different agencies. Where can you cut? Where can you shut them down, defund them, replace them? That's a lot of ongoing work that's going on right now. So I'm going to be very well prepared on day one. And this is a really true thing about me that goes deeper than politics or philosophy, like in my character. You ask my wife or my sons or whatever, like they're often embarrassed about it because I hate bureaucracy. I just really hate arbitrary power, being told what to do. You do that. That's I'm constantly questioning it, like just in my daily life, and like, why do you have to do? Why do I have to fill out this form? Why are you asking me that? Why? You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense. Oh, it's just the rules. Well, who made the rule? That's like who I am, and so actually, that attitude is what you need to like I say, take a sledgehammer to this bloated bureaucracy. And when you say day one, the areas where I can really make a quick difference on that is the gas prices, because most of the gas price increase over other states. So right now, $5, $6 gas in California. In most other states, it's down in the threes or whatever. So
Mhm.
let's just call it a $2 uplift in California for gas prices per gallon compared to other states. Most of that is not the gas tax. The gas tax is just gone up from 61.2 cents a gallon to I think it's
63.
63.4. Right. So the gas tax, I can't just delete or cut on my own. Now, what I will do is go to the legislature on day one, special session, and say, let's suspend, reduce, cut the gas tax. And it wasn't just me saying that. Obviously, Chad was saying that, but also some of the Democrat candidates were saying that. Matt Mahan was saying that. So I
Mhm.
think we may even be able to find some point of agreement with the Democrats on some of the taxes. But I'll get to that in a second. On the regulations, like the bigger part of the high gas price is stuff coming out of CARB, like the low carbon fuel standard, the cap and trade. They now call it cap and invest scheme. It's basically a hidden tax on energy and all these things. So that you can do something about directly on day one. Same with vehicle registration, where you can cut that because that's coming out of the agency that runs that. So there's a bunch of things you can do on the regulatory side immediately, very aggressively. It's also there's other examples of that are the State Board of Education that's pushing all this insanity in the schools and the curriculum and the ideological extremism there. You can replace all of them, and I've said I will. Hopefully, we get Sonia Shaw elected, and then you've got a really powerful force there to bring some sanity back into the schools. On taxes, I know it's a long answer. I'll just quickly talk about this. So my tax plan was first 100 grand tax free. Above that, a flat tax of 7.5% state income tax. We got a lot of feedback on the campaign that that's actually quite a low number. And there's a lot of people earning between 100 and let's say 150 grand in California. That's not a huge amount of money. I mean, some people in other states may hear that and say that's a good money. It doesn't get you very far in California. I mean, you've got a number of counties in California where the official government level for low income is 100 grand. Low income. And so we got a lot of feedback, so we redid the math, and so now I've raised it to 150 grand. That's what I'm going for. First 150 grand, no state income tax. In the campaign, Katie Porter, one of the Democrats, she took my tax plan when it was 100 and said, that makes sense. We shouldn't be taxing, people on low incomes, basically, in California, paying 9.3% state income tax. In other words, I think we may be able to get some agreement even on that with the Democrats.
Steve, I like raising it to 150. That's good because I know that there's some cities in California where people can't comfortably live with 100,000. But
Exactly.
you brought up carb. Uh,
Mhm.
we all love carb and their over regulations. I've seen some data in regards to the California emission standards compared to the federal standards. And there's some scientists that would say that the differences are negligible. That they're close enough after all of the standards changes in our vehicles from vehicle manufacturers that started under the George Bush administration. Um, if the gap has narrowed enough to make California gasoline standards benefit negligible versus the national average, can you commit to fighting for eliminating that mandate and moving towards the federal fuel standard?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that you've got a lot of duplication of regulations. Um, I'll look into that because, but although on gas prices, that's not what's driving it. It's actually basically taxes hidden as this. It's part of what they set up in 2006, AB 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act, and that was this
Yeah,
whole infrastructure of
I
tax. So on the cap and trade and trading permits, it's all ridiculous. On the emission standards, it's a great point. I think that is. I
I
mean,
don't think
generally
it's
speaking,
necessarily what drives the price to go up, but it allows our prices to be it allows the fluctuation in California
it's
because
also
we
really a
don't share the
nightmare
same
for.
standard as other states.
Yeah, and it's also a nightmare for on the business side, for trucks and
Correct.
commercial vehicles and so on, where you've got a perfectly good vehicle, but you've got to upgrade it for no good reason and get a new
Yeah,
one that costs a fortune, and it's ridiculous.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you look at states like Texas where, if they're having a fuel crisis, they have pipelines where they can bring in oil from other states. We don't have that in California because of our
exactly.
overregulation, because of that fuel standard. But I will say $3, the $3 gas sounds amazing, especially right now. Is there something we can look forward to with our electric rates?
Oh yeah. So, and also, I just want to say it's not insane to think that we can do that because we were in Texas just the other day and it was 3.49. Like, so it was, oh, the Iran war, Trump. Just now, it was that in Texas. And we have abundant oil reserves in California. By some measure, the Monterey Shale, which is like the underlying reserves for the whole state, is the second largest oil reserve in the world. So it's crazy that we're importing nearly 80% now of our oil. All right, on electric. So just to make the comparison, our gas prices are the highest in all 50 states, including Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which shows how insane it is, even though we have oil reserves. For electric, we're the highest everywhere except Hawaii. They've doubled basically in the last 10 years. It's more than double the national average. The number one reason for that is ideological. In the name of climate, they've been pushing this focus on telling the utilities it's got to be wind and solar. That's it. And that's more expensive. And they run around saying, oh, solar panels are now cheaper. No, there's a lot of problems with that. First of all, the solar panels mostly are made in China and shipped across the ocean. Secondly, they don't add in the cost of, when you put in a solar farm, all the new transmission lines you need to build and maintain, the batteries that you need to install and maintain, because obviously the sun doesn't shine all the time. So none of that is factored in. And when you do factor it in, it's more expensive. That's why the rates have gone up. Same with wind. And so at the same time that they've done that, we've got all these resources in place in California that that are idle. For example, we've got natural gas fired power stations that are running at 10 to 15% of their capacity, purely because they hate fossil fuels. So, step number one is we can change that and just increase the output of the natural gas fired power stations. That will bring the cost. Basically, if we ran them at full capacity, that would meet all our current needs pretty much. There's another stupid example. You've got hydroelectric power, which is It's green. It's like it's water. It's hydro. Because of their insane ideological obsession and a lot of corruption, actually, from the private equity and all these industries that own wind and solar, they have now classified hydroelectric power in California is not classified renewable. It's insane. And so that means they don't get the incentives and the regulatory stuff. So there's a power station, hydropower, Helms, just up in the Sierra foothills, that could be producing, it currently produces 5% of California's electricity. It's a lot. It's like half the last nuclear power station we have, Diablo Canyon. That could be that hydro station could be producing 4 or 5 times as much electricity. It's already built, but they don't let them do it. It's just crazy. So all of that together, I think we can get back to a more reasonable level. And so over time, this is not a quick thing. This is over years. But I think we can get to my promise on electric is cut your electric bills in half so that we are at the national average. There's no reason why we can't be there.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I would love to see that, because every time it's just you see PG&E, oh, another hike, another hike, another
All the
hike,
time. It's
all the
disgusting.
time, and it's like, geez, like it's annoying.
No, and
And
then to
the businesses as well. Like,
add
remember,
insult to
I
injury is that we have a bunch of brownouts, and well, we lose power and we're getting charged more. So me, just as a consumer, if I'm getting charged more, I would you know expect for the infrastructure to get upgraded or get maintained so that we don't have these type of
yeah,
issues. But
we're paying
we pay
more.
more for a worse product at this
Yeah,
point.
well, that's the story of California. We're paying more and getting less. Highest taxes, worse results. Just on electric, I mean, and it's not just the consumers directly, like families and so on. You've got the business. It's a massive reason why everything else is so expensive. When you go for a meal, restaurant prices are up, or grocery. We have the highest grocery prices in the country. The energy costs that go into that, gas, diesel for the trucks. Electric in all the kind of supply chain for that. That's a big part of it. I was at a restaurant. I used to run a couple of restaurants. Most of my career has been in business. working in other companies or starting my own businesses. And back in the day in England, I had a couple of restaurants in London. It was a really tough business. So it's very small margins, hard to make money, even when things are good. Here in California, it's a nightmare. I was just last night. I went, and I'm always interested to talk to restaurant owners and check in and do events in restaurants, support them, and so on. As restaurant owner, I checked in and I asked about the electric bill, 4.5 grand a month. Yes, he said it's just a nightmare. It's just going crazily high, up and up and up for the same basic thing, which is electric. And so it's a real problem that's a very practical thing we can do to help people and businesses.
Hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's I was looking at some stuff, small business wise, and one of the things that discourages people, and I know you talked about this before too, or at least I've seen a post from you, um, is as soon as you sign up for an LLC, you owe the state eight
Yeah,
hundred dollars, whether you make
800
money or
bucks.
not. And I think that's ridiculous. And you
Yeah.
know, hopefully that can change and go away.
No, I've committed
Also,
to that, and that's just the thing. We're not going to we're not going to take that off people. No, it's outrageous. It's just gouging people. What's the justification for that?
yeah,
You pay taxes once you get. It's just crazy. No, that's going to
yeah.
be abolished.
Yeah, and then one of the things, like obviously, all the stuff that we've been talking about, when you fix the electric and lower the taxes and all that, I think that's going to help with housing and affordability. The question I was going to ask you was, is there an actual timeline to try to shift that? Because I know a lot of the things you mentioned, and you said it as well, are going to take time.
Yeah,
But I think once those things are done, affordability kind of takes care of itself, because if my energy bill is going to be less, my gas bill is going to be less, gasoline is less, less tax here and there, then yeah, I can afford to buy a house now, or I can at least feel more comfortable
yeah,
taking that risk. So do you have an actual time frame or something that you're shooting for, or what kind of mechanism
yeah.
to get more homes built in California? Again,
Well, that just
affordability
takes a
has a
long
lot to do
time.
with
Yeah,
that.
I mean, look, it's in my blood. 'Cause like I said, my stepdad was a builder, and my first job was project manager for a construction company, and so I don't know, I feel it, and I talk to builders and developers a lot, and it's there's so many things. One of the things that we can do quickly is the building codes, right? The rules that you have to apply. They're way higher and more onerous than any other state. And again, it's driven by ideology, this climate extremism. I want to say just one thing about it, because in all these areas, like one of the big drivers of cost is climate extremism. And someone may hear that and say, "Oh, he's anti." No, it's we love the environment. That's part of California. We love the fact that we got this beautiful state and the amazing parks and open space. Of course we do. That's part of our soul as Californians to love nature and the environment. None of this stuff on climate is helping the environment. None of it. It's all ideology for the sake of it. It's making no impact on global warming or global temperatures or anything. It's just pointless pain for the sake of it. It's just really important. So on the building codes, they're putting all this stuff in, like you have to have EV charge. You build an apartment, you've got to have EV chargers for every unit. You've got to have electrical systems in solar panel. Just the endless things that they make it more expensive to build. So if you take a floor plan of an apartment building, single family home, industrial, whatever it may be, you can be sure that it will cost just building it, including the materials cost, is more expensive because so many things they've restricted what you can, whether you can even produce the materials, whether that's timber or aggregate or whatever it may be, that you can't get it in California anymore because it's so expensive to make, or they've restricted it. So just the straightforward construction cost is 2 or 3 times what it is in other states. That's something you can do something about straight away. Some of the stuff that takes longer is changing the rules about where you can build, because what they're trying to do is force the construction. Oh, there's another thing, quick thing you can do, and put leverage on local governments to do this. One of the main drivers of the high cost of a new place is what they call impact fees, which is a hidden tax on housing. People aren't even aware of it because it's not shown in the price. But the house builder pays it, the developer pays it. Used to be a couple of grand for a house or whatever. Like impact, the name comes from you build something, there's an impact on the local community, you've got to pay a bit of money for, I don't know, contribute towards amenities, a park, sidewalks, whatever. Now, there's an estimate from the UC Berkeley where there's a sort of center of expertise on housing that impact fees can be up to 20% of the cost of a new home. All these various fees. It was just in this housing bill that they passed last year that Gavin Newsom touted as the solution to the housing crisis, AB 150 and AB 151, all about, that was all about forcing apartments into suburban areas, which I totally disagree with. But hidden in that was what they call a VMT charge. That's been around since 2018. VMT. It's another hidden tax. It's called vehicle miles traveled. And it's insane. If it's a calculation that if you build a new development or whatever, it will increase vehicle miles traveled because people will be driving. Yeah, that's life. That's what we want, growth and opportunity. They charge you for it. It's a tax. The money is then taken and put into what they call a VMT mitigation bank, where they're spending it on stuff to mitigate climate, like, I don't know, bike lanes or whatever. So they've, in that bill that Newsom said would be the solution to the housing crisis, they worked out for a new single family home, the VMT charge hidden in that, $325,000 over 20 years. I think this is what they're doing. So as you've got the building codes you can do something about quickly. These hidden taxes and impact fees, you can directly, some of it's coming from state agencies, so you can stop that directly. And some of it is local, where you can put pressure on local governments because the state government has a lot of leverage. The things that are going to take longer are the rules about where you can build, because I think this idea, they call it density, where you can only build, basically where the current boundary is. You can't build outwards, you only can build upwards, because they say it's for climate. I think that's ridiculous. We already have the highest density in the country. Only 7% of our land is developed in California. It's insane. That's the lowest in the country. There's plenty of places you can build without getting into, destroying national parks or whatever. So that will help to reduce land prices, and it'll mean that we can get back to building single family homes. One thing I want to make, one of my pledges, is starter homes for young families. Because of all these costs and regulations for builders now, often it doesn't make sense to build what we used to have a lot of in California, a nice little house, maybe, one bedroom to start with, and you can add a second bedroom. 1,000 square feet, not huge, but really perfect for a young family. Now we don't really build that anymore. It's all 3,000 square feet, kind of, people for people who are already rich, and that's a real problem. There's a real gap in the market, and so I've got a specific plan to build starter homes. Anyway, I'm going on a lot because I've spent a lot of
No,
time on housing.
Steve,
but
Steve, you're making me so uncomfortable talking about Texas so much. Belarus and everything that you're saying, it's like, how much do we give California?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But on that subject of taxes, you mentioned the tax break that applies up to $150,000 uniformly across all incomes. Um, for not to be Bernie Sanders like, but are there carve outs for capital gains, investments, or other wealth building mechanisms that benefit like millionaires and billionaires?
Well, no, I think that the tax system is too complicated. So right now you've got all these endless rules and rates, and it's just way too complicated. And that itself is a barrier to growth and economic activity, because you're just giving money to accountants, and it's just such a headache. And a lot of businesses are leaving as a result of that. I just totally reject the argument that we are somehow the rich don't pay their fair share in California. It's just literally not true. You have right now about half the state income tax is paid by the top 1%. And the tax rates for the people at the top, they're over 60% when you add it all up. And what's it doing is driving successful people out of the state. That's one of the reasons we have the highest unemployment rate in the country and the highest poverty rate in the country. So I believe in free enterprise, and I think that the right tax system is low and simple. Regulations need to be light and predictable, and that's what we should be doing, because the best engine of opportunity, jobs and wealth and opportunity, is businesses being successful, and that includes entrepreneurs seeing California as a place to start and grow your business. And we are driving people away. And this insane billionaires tax has done that. And in fact, it's counterproductive because it's lost revenue. Like you've seen this, just the idea of the billionaire tax, the threat of it, say, it's on the ballot, hasn't even been passed yet. Maybe it will go through, maybe it won't. Maybe one of the other ballot initiatives that actually are against it will cancel it out. If I'm governor, I will make sure that we use everything if it is passed, to stop it through legal means, because it's unconstitutional. But whatever, it hasn't even happened yet, and yet you've had trillions of dollars of wealth have left California. How does that help us? You've actually already lost billions of dollars of tax revenue this year, have gone. So we've got less money in the coffers. How does that help? It's crazy. It's total socialism. Remember that my parents are from Hungary. It's a communist country. I saw what that does, that kind of attitude that you're now getting from the left. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I did a clip on this a few months ago where it's like the millionaires, they can get up and go easily.
Exactly.
The people in the middle class, working, lower class people, we're here. So who's, the middle class becomes the rich people now, and what happens then? So yeah, I totally disagree with the millionaires tax. I think if they did just have a flat tax across, they're gonna pay their share because, you know, 10% of 100,000 isn't comparable to 10% of 100,000,000. So
Exactly right.
they're gonna pay more than us either way. So
Exactly.
me, I've always thought, even federally, just have a flat tax and
I
then
agree very much with that.
stop overspending, spend wisely. That would be nice too.
Exactly, exactly. Where's the money going? I mean, just, just, I mean, I'll give you some examples. Like, we pay all these taxes, and they keep saying we need. If you hear Democrat, you listen to the way they talk, or activists, or unions, whatever, teacher unions. It's always we need more resource. The answer to everything is more resources, more resources. They've got the resources, and the results are getting worse. I mean, but where's the money going? Like, you look at roads, right? We have the highest gas tax. We talked about that. The highest vehicle registration, right? In most other states, registering your vehicle, $100 or less. Here, six, seven, 800. Last night, I just asked the audience, 1,300, 17. It's they're gouging us. And where's the
Yeah.
money? They say, oh, but Becerra, when I make this point, he said, "How are you going to pay for the roads?" Well, we have the
Nobody's
worst road.
anyways.
Yeah, we have the worst roads in the country. We have 50th out of 50 on one of the measures. On another measure, we're 49th. Only Alaska is worse. And they're like, Alaska. And so, where's the money going? I spoke to a contractor, a lady. She runs a business. They do public works contracting. She literally builds the roads and operates all over the country. She said in Texas, in California, it costs 4 times as much to build the exact same equivalent piece of road as it does in Texas. And our roads are worse. Why? Because they layer in all this nonsense. The environmental rules that are just pointless, don't make any difference. Project labor agreements with the unions that massively increase wage rates. Community workforce agreements where you got to hire local. It just on and on. Each one of those things, you could say when they first thought of it, oh, I get why they're doing that. They want to look after workers. They want to, but like when it adds up, it goes so far to the extreme. It just makes everything so expensive. You look at schools. We have the highest taxes in the country, including highest state sales tax, income tax, whatever, all these different things, property tax. Everyone's being just going crazy how much we're paying in tax. And then all the time I hear, we've been doing town halls for, right since the beginning of the campaign, up and down the state all the time, right? I've done hundreds and hundreds of town halls, and we've had thousands of people coming, many thousands. I really have spent a lot of time with people all over the state, and they ask questions, we take pictures, and like hug, and they talk to me. Like, one of the things that is just drives people crazy, they say it's for schools, we pay all these taxes, and yet all the time the public schools are asking us as parents to pay more for basic equipment, basic supplies, books, paper, pens. Why are we paying for that when we already pay
Not only that,
the health system?
they ask the parents to purchase books, pens, and
Yeah,
so that they could take them to the school. And I'm like, I'm
that's
paying
right.
twice for this?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's just outrageous. Where's the money going? Well, I'll tell you where it's going. If you look at the numbers, um, it's the deals that they've done with the unions on pensions, and actually, it's badly run. I mean, um, if you take a school district across the state, the school district will pay of the money that's going to them for the schools. I think it's 19 and a quarter or 19.5%, nearly 20%, straight off goes to pay for pensions before anything goes to the kids or the classroom. Nearly 1/5. It's just ridiculous. That's a really big area. We got to reform that. We got to do something about that, because it's just outrageous that all this money is going into the system, but at the same time you're asking parents to pay for stuff.
Our
And
education
Steve,
system's a mess, Steve.
here in California, I remember about, early 2000s, there was a big story about, they were building a federal building in Sacramento, and they started looking at the invoices, and they found that, we were paying for toilets at the cost of like $2,000 or
Yeah.
even higher than that. And it's, and that's what Californians deal with. I mean, we've been dealing with these stories since, well before the early 2000s, of course, but I'm just giving you an example. This is how far back this corruption goes, and I'm just going to call it corruption because they're stealing our
It
money.
is corruption.
So, just to give you a little bit of understanding, and I know that you just described that you talked to, a lot of people, you have these type of conversations, but this is the frustration and the lack of trust that Californians have for any politician for that matter.
It's Steve, right now, California, when it comes to education, we are statistically not doing well. Tony Thurmond is, even though they passed California AB 181, when it comes to Tony, I'm like, good, take that power away from him. But we have Sanya Shah. That's,
Yeah.
you know, we're months away from Sanya Shah possibly winning an election, and I think she could do good there.
Yeah.
So when it comes to education, I know I've heard you talk about improving math and science in education. Are you committed? Are you going to commit public funds specifically to building a STEM pipeline so California can train its own workforce instead of importing tech and engineering talent?
Yeah. It's really important. It's a really big part of my plan, and you'll see more of it as we really get going into this phase of the campaign, is skills training of that kind, especially technical skills for every school, because that's what we have to do. Because right now, because of the lack of skilled workers, and especially on the technical front, engineers and so on, we're seeing the jobs go to other states. And even as we've got this AI revolution, where you've got these big tech companies doing really well and generating a lot of revenue. That's one of the reasons we're still the fourth biggest economy in the world. But we also have the highest unemployment rate because all the investment, like skilled engineering and chips and whatever, it's all going to other states because we don't. One of the reasons, I mean, there's all the other things we've been talking about. Everything's so expensive and a hassle to build or whatever, but it's also that we don't have a skilled workforce in California. It's really important, and you've got to do it together with industry because you've got to match the skills with what business needs. That's a really big part of what I want to make happen, and it goes right up the just practical skills, so the kind of micro dirty jobs type skills, but also the advanced technical skills so that we can really give people opportunity here. Very important part of my plan.
Yeah, honestly, it excites me that we're focusing on real jobs. I'm always an advocate for STEM, and I saw the interview with Tony Thurmond where he was responding to California AB, the Assembly Bill 181, and he brings up STEAM so much, and that throws in the aspect of arts. And I'm not against the arts, but I think when we're failing as much as we are in what is important for the future of California, I feel like, we really need to focus on STEM and maybe I don't I hate to say put arts in the back seat, but we need to prepare the future of California.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, and also, what do they mean arts? Like, of course, there's a foundational thing, which is reading, that's incredibly important, basic literacy. And there's a simple thing that is said, which is true, which is if up to third grade, you're learning to read. And then from third grade onwards, from fourth grade onwards, you're reading to learn. And if you can't read, you can't learn. You can't do any of these things. It's a
Right.
foundational skill for everything. So if by arts they mean read, I don't know. But then I'm all, yeah, we got to have that. But you're right. The focus has to be, like, what's the point of all this? So people can have a good life. Like the simple basic thing that we got to, it's California, a good job where you make enough to raise your family in a home of your own, in a safe neighborhood, with a good school so your kids have a better life. That's what most people want. And we've just destroyed that, every part of that. And the prospects, for young, people thinking, yeah, I can make it in California. I can be who I want to be, and I've got the skills to get there. It's just gone. It's really bad.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to you know, turn schools around, education around.
Yeah.
Um, have more. I remember when I was in middle school, I forget what the class was called, but we were there, we were drilling, uh, we were making stuff. And you don't see that anymore. And I think, things like that need to be brought back.
Yes.
Um, but kind of, related to school is sports, right? Girl sports.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court kind of left it up to the states now on how they're going to handle that. Um, so just obviously, Geo made fun of your bracelets, but I know you have the Save Girl sports
Yes.
bracelet.
Yes.
But, so I know, based on what you've said, you're gonna wear that bracelet until, you do. And so that to me shows commitment to it. But as, governor, given with what Supreme Court just did, what would your course of action be for that?
This is something that we just got to deal with. It's outrageous, and it's an example of how the insanity is just captured. Things that, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago would have been just seen as, what are you talking about? That's insane. Has now become normalized, but not for most normal people, just for a tiny group of elitist academic kind of people. And so that's that are driving all these ideologues that are driving everything. Um, and so we've got the majority of Californians with us on this, like the really clear majority. And Sonia's been so strong on it. I'm completely with her. I Even before I met Sonia and we started kind of doing things together and so on, I had done a lot of work on this. And so there's actually a very simple fix, which is that this all goes back to one piece of legislation in California. It's actually 13 years old now. It's called AB 1266, and it was passed in 2013. That's what set up these rules where girls' locker rooms, sports, whatever, it's not no longer reserved just for biological girls, and you have biological boys in those sports and spaces and so on. Well, I'd done a lot of work on it with my legal team, including the top lawyer for Governor Wilson, Pete Wilson. And the truth is that it's unconstitutional, and the governor has the power to initiate the process of overturning legislation that's been passed and signed if it violates the state constitution. And we are very confident that that bill does in two areas. I think it's section 28 of the Constitution, which is about um, safety in schools, because you're getting a lot of girls injured and hurt this way. And section 31, which is about gender discrimination. And this clearly discriminates against girls. We see that all these track and field meets and so on. So we're gonna on day one, that's something we're gonna begin the process of overturning that law. And Michael Gates, who's my running with us on this golden ticket, as we call it, he's my running mate for Attorney General, also very strong on this, and he thinks we can suspend it on day one while the legal proceeding goes on. So we're going to deal with that very strongly.
Steve, you brought up Pete Wilson, and that reminds me of the healthcare and Medi-Cal. You're proposing to end full Medi-Cal coverage for undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
How do you message it so it doesn't read so that it reads as fiscal responsibility rather than an anti-immigrant policy?
Yeah. So,
And
I mean,
this just frames back to Pete Wilson when he did something similar, and the Latinos completely changed face and left the Hispanic vote completely shifted to supporting Democrats. And we're still trying to recover from that. Something that he did in 94, 98 just showed a complete drop off, I think from 51% to 25%. So it was a massive drop off for the Latino community.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't here then, but I've seen some of the, I've read about it a lot and I've studied it, and it seems to me that one of the features of that was not so much the actual policy, but the way it was communicated. There were these ads, as I've seen the ads, where it was just, there was a kind of something about the tone of those ads, I think, was very off-putting to a lot of people. Um, Even though they may have agreed with the substance of it, which is that taxpayer money shouldn't be spent for people who actually, are citizens of other countries. And so I think that it's a very reasonable point to say we've got, you've got people in California, working class Californians who can barely afford healthcare. The costs keep going up. They've just put another tax on it. And at the same time, we're taking tax money from those people and spending it on more generous healthcare benefits, like free eye care and dental, etc., for citizens of other countries. And that just doesn't seem right. And I think that it's nothing against immigrants, because I'm an immigrant. I'm literally the only. I just kept saying that in the debates. I'm the only immigrant running, and I always put it this way: I'm the candidate of the legal immigrant community for the legal immigrant community. But we've got to be able, and it's a common sense thing to say there's a difference between legal and illegal, and I
Yeah,
think
I'm
that
I'm
that's reasonable.
I'm not in disagreement. My parents came here. They came here illegally, but they have since become legal,
Yeah,
and they did it. They did it in the 80s and 90s, becoming legal. You know, things were a little different then. But I do agree with you. You know, you do have to be legal. Um, while there's certain things that I truly did agree with Chad Bianco on, I think we do need immigration reform. I think that's a whole different discussion, though. We I don't want to jump into that too much, but with the Latino community, it's so tight knit, especially with those communities that have just arrived, and they will gather behind. Um, the illegal community just because it is such a tight knit
well,
community.
some of them. I
Uh,
mean, but it's. That's not. You're right. There's some of that, but there's also. I've strongly seen the opposite,
I've
especially in,
I've I'm on the opposite end, Steve. But
yeah, and
the
I've
the
seen it. I mean,
reality is
I've
that
done a lot of.
the majority of them do uh, don't want illegals to just be deported, as an example. So when we
Right.
see the rhetoric of like Pete Wilson's videos showing immigrants running across the border,
Yeah.
you know, that's not the case anymore like it was in
Yeah.
the 70s and 80s when they were running across the open border. But it hits us emotionally, and I say us
Exactly.
plurally as Latinos. And it's a Democrat tactic to hit us to allow us to get hit emotionally. But when it came from Pete Wilson, it was like, well, that was stupid. I hate to be so blunt, but it was stupid to attack Latinos,
Yeah.
which I said it's a tight knit community. It was a blunder, and it's not a blunder that I want to see Republicans make again as a
And I
conservative.
totally get that. 100% get that. That's why I say very strongly how much I care about helping legal immigrants in California achieve the California dream, and also that the focus of any immigration enforcement, obviously, everyone can agree with this, um, needs to be on like that famous phrase, the worst go first, criminals and so on. And I think there's
Yeah.
widespread support for that. And in any case, it's not the business of the governor in the sense that the governor, it's a federal matter. Um, I think also one
True.
thing I'll say is that in my conversations, and I've done a lot of again town halls or roundtables, just lots of meetings with the Latino community, and there'll be many more as we go forward, particularly in places like East LA. I've seen this very strongly, and LA County more generally. You've got a real resentment about what's happening with people who didn't come the right way and are just recently arrived and getting all this stuff that people didn't get. And I can literally visualize the people say, oh, like we go to the grocery store and they have EBT cards and free cell phones, and now they're getting their rent pay. Like, we never got any of that. My parents, grandparents didn't get that. We worked really hard and did it the right way, and it was a struggle. And so the people just to get all this handed on a plate with paid for by us is not okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think it's a
agree.
matter of presentation, Steve.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, we agree ultimately, but I think it's the presentation and
I agree.
the politics that are played. If someone says, for example, let's talk about immigration reform, then they turn it into, this candidate wants to give visas or citizenship to everybody, which is not the case, right? Obviously, but it lends itself, and it all depends on the way that it's communicated, the way that it's presented.
Yes.
I think the overall point here. But I do. We did. I personally looked into y- contributions that were made for each candidate,
Hmm.
and I do want to point out that I want to commend you because in the research that I've done, you've had a lot of small donor contributions and
Hmm.
individual contributors, as opposed to some other candidates that have large contributions from PACs. You talked about unions and stuff like that. And one of the concerns that Californians have, or just Americans have in general, is is the contributions that those PACs have.
Hmm.
And I kind of talked a little bit about perception, and it gives us the perception that we don't actually have a say in these votes because certain candidates get backed by these PACs, and they get voted in. So
Yeah.
it's the lobbyist, making the decisions, and not us, the constituents, the citizens. So I do want to commend you for that and that research that I have done. But moving forward, um, do you see yourself, proposing any type of measures or any type of reform so that these large PACs don't have that type of power in these elections?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that it's funny. Funny you should bring that up. There's a lot. I've got a lot to say about that. I think that first I'll start by saying a lot of these rules, federal rules, and they come up against the First Amendment because the First Amendment has typically been um, interpreted as including, donating is a form of speech, and therefore been very difficult around that. The thing that I want to that I focused on in terms of that influence issue is actual voting in the legislature. So I think that it's very clear that the legislature is completely corrupted and bought by special interests. And the main one is the unions. But it's also the law. Like, why do we have one of the main things driving businesses out of the state and making everything so expensive are these lawsuits in California? It's not discussed as often as taxes and regulations. It's a huge problem for big business, but also small business. Go back to restaurants that we talked about. There's this thing called PAGA, PAGA, Private Attorney General Act. It was passed in 2004. It basically opened the floodgates to these shakedown, extortionate lawsuits that hit every small bit. It's just a nightmare. There's a statistic which is that if you open 90% of businesses in California that open are going to be hit by a lawsuit. It's just crazy.
It's
But
insane.
why? Why? Because the lawyers who benefit, the trial lawyers, they
Mm.
are one of the biggest donors to Democrat politicians. So they keep giving them this money, and then in return, they get what they call these private right of action, these opportunities to sue that are in the legislation. It's really bad. And so that's one example of it. So one thing that I've written about, and I actually don't
Mhm.
have, I haven't sort of got a strong plan yet about whether or not it can be implemented, but you can certainly use the kind of public shaming to do this. Is I introduced this concept of conflict donors, conflict of interest. Now, the legislature, the state legislature, passed a law
Mhm.
that banned local politicians from ruling on matters where they had a conflict of interest, where they had a donation from a relevant interest. For example, a real estate developer that wants to get a development through, let's say it's city council, you're not allowed to vote on that measure if you took money from that real estate thing, right? That now the state legislature imposed that on local government in California, but they are totally free to vote on all sorts of things where they get money, like the teacher unions, the main funders of the Democrat. So as far as I'm concerned, should be the same rule that if
Mhm.
you get money from the teacher unions, you cannot vote on anything to do with education, etc. Like that would really make a big difference. On the question of donations generally,
Mhm.
it's a very interesting thing because that was what you're describing there, which is the corruption of our system, is the reason that I started this business that actually became quite a kind of negative thing about me in the primary. This business called CrowdPack, and it was a platform for donations. And the whole point of it was to try and deal with this corruption, to democratize the whole process of running for office. And so the mission statement of CrowdPack, remember, it's a startup. It was a venture. It was a business, and the mission statement was to make it easier for independent minded candidates to run for office without relying on big donors, corporate interests, and the party machines. It was all about trying to open up the world of small dollar fundraising because what you learn about politics is that when people want to run for office, you need money and it's like really hard. And where do I go? It's kind of and so we created all these products that made it easier to run for office. It's a bit like the simple elevator pitch was Kickstarter for politics, like the Kickstarter site or GoFundMe, where and we had this stuff like where you could say, I'm thinking of running for city council. You create a fundraising page, you share it around, but you say you won't be charged unless I actually run. So it's a way of testing the waters. Whatever, all these innovative ways. Anyway, that's what that business was, and it was a non-partisan business. It was. I started off saying, look, this problem is on all sides. It's not just Republicans, it's not just Democrats. And everyone said to me, it's politics. You have to pick a side. You can't be. You have to be Republican or Democrat. I said, I don't want to do that. I'm much more independent minded. Anyway, what happened was we started this business in 2013, 2014, and then in 2016, Trump was elected. And funnily enough, it just really took off as a business. People, we're out there, we're promoting it. And there was a particular moment when, after Trump was elected, the kind of resistance, if you remember, all this like we're going to resist Trump. And all these people were running for office for the first time. There's a big movement to run for office for the first time. And it's particularly on the opposition to Trump, on the Democrat side. You had these groups like with the name was Run for Something and all of this. And they found CrowdPack and the tools that we'd produced and really started using it. So it really took off on the left. And just at that time, I started my show on Fox News. So it's this really weird situation where I'm the co-founder and CEO of a platform of a business that's actually really being taken up by the left. And so that's what produced some of these things that then in the primary, people latched onto that. So, oh, look, he's raising money for Black Lives Matter, or he's raising money for whatever it may be. No, I wasn't. It was the business was there as a platform to try and democratize political fundraising.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense what you're saying. And, if
Now, it doesn't. I don't own it. mean, actually, sorry, just to complete the story, but it became the tension became too great. I was like CEO of this company, which by the time we got to this point, it was like 2018, I think, and is getting a lot of grief for it because I was hosting this show on Fox News that was, supporting Trump and whatever. And I looked at the data in the business, and basically, if I remember, 87% of the candidates on our platform were Democrats, and 93% of the money raised was for Democrats. So I said, actually, I may have intended it to be a non-partisan platform, but the market has kind of spoken, and it's being used by Democrats. So that's what it is. So we should just admit that. In fact, because we were officially non-partisan, there were a lot of organizations that wouldn't work with us. And so I said, look, and it was inhibiting our growth. So I said, look, none of this makes sense. We're basically a Democrat platform. We should say so officially, but that I can't run that, so I have to leave. So we had this whole, I spoke to the board, and then sold the company actually. So that's what happened, and that's why I left. But it was driven by exactly your point, which is this: it's not just a suspicion; it's a reality that these powerful interests buy the outcomes they want from the political system. That's what happens.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with that explanation because that's exactly what people were looking at is that the majority of the donations were going to the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
So,
that's correct.
that's what caused the contention and, in that situation. But, you talking about it and explaining it, and it gives us obviously the insight of how it started and what the intentions were. And, the honesty that you just shared right now, that the majority was being used by the Democrats. And it makes sense to Daniel's point. That's the information that we need to hear. So
Yeah.
we appreciate you coming onto the platform and talking about these things with us. And I don't know if Daniel, you've got any other
No, no.
questions or anything like that, but
No, I just wanted to say likewise. Thanks, Steve, for coming on. We appreciate his time and being here to answer our questions. I told you, Steve, in Fresno when we were out here. I said, "Hey, I don't hate you, Steve."
No, I know, and that's exactly right. No, I'm really, really happy that we talked that day, and very, very happy to have had this conversation. And let's do it again. I'm, running around trying to get all the votes we can. But you're a really important platform, and thank you for what you do. And it's a great pleasure to
Yeah,
be
for
with
sure.
you
We'll
today.
definitely
Thank you.
do this again. And anytime you're out in these neck of the woods, as they say, let us know, and we'll try to get out there. But
Sure.
again, thank you for coming on. Everyone that's tuning in and listening to this, thank you for your time, and hopefully you got to know Steve Hilton a little better. Peace be with you.
Thanks, guys. See
Thank
you
you. God
soon.
bless
thank
you.
you again. Thank
I
you,
don't hate you
Steve.
either, Steve.
Glad to hear it.
Uh,